Keep up with Scottish football with your host, John Turner.
So the guest we have on the Low Ball Show is Sandy Hodge. Sandy, who's been with clubs such as Queen of the South, Hamilton, Partick Thistle, Stranraer, Alloa and Cowdenbeath. Sandy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a wee trip down memory lane.
And do you know, I suppose that's the kind of first question I've got then, a trip down kind of memory lane. Is it often that you kind of look back or think back now to your own playing days?
I don't know. I'm, in terms of my day job, I'm back working within football, so that's got the juices flowing again. And I've been reminiscing and reflecting on, recently in the last 4 or 5 months. But before that, as you get older, just time marches on. And in fact, I met a former colleague of mine, former player of mine in Glasgow a few weeks ago, and they were talking about a 20-year anniversary of a league-winning team that they were at the night before. And it's those start moments you realise that actually it wasn't yesterday. We are talking, 15, 20 years, but it's always nice. I'd finished playing by the time I had kids, so the kids never really saw me playing. So sometimes they'll ask about it if they've been at school and people are talking and so on. But that's about it.
And how can is that? We obviously talking about the kids and stuff. I mean, do you ever get the dad? Did you actually do that? And then you find yourself pulling out the old photos and things.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there wasn't obviously mobile phones thereabouts. It's scrapbooks and it's grainy Hamilton advertiser cuttings and all sorts that I managed to drag up and share with them. So there's not quite the same footage as today, but yeah, you do get that. Who's the best player you played against and how many goals did you score? And sadly, playing in the lower leagues and being a defender, I've not really got too good an answer for them. But it's that's the way it is.
That's the thing. That there's never the question of what's the best tackle you ever done.
No, absolutely not. It doesn't make any headlines.
And to look back at your career, I mean, you began kind of youth level with Motherwell.
Yep.
Was that just something that from a kind of young age you had managed to get into with going along to Motherwell?
Do you know, it's an interesting backstory because it never ever crossed my mind when I was young that I wanted to be a football player. It was nothing that I had an aspiration to do. I was brought up in deepest darkest South Lanarkshire on a farm, so it was literally a pair of wellies and a couple of fence posts. And my family are not a big football family, and I just had a love of the game. And we'd kick a ball about day and night, and started playing for the primary school, and then went along to local. Back in those days, it was boys' clubs, and it just started from there. And I remember it was Dundee United that invited me when I was 11 or 12 to go and train, and it was a complete bolt out the blue. I had, just from the background I had. These clubs were a million miles away from anywhere, and you had absolutely no chance of playing at that type of level. So it was a nice surprise, but I think that kind of helped me be grounded and level-headed and in my approach right throughout my career. So, but I loved my time at Motherwell. I went there really young, and just the position I played, and clearly coaches saw a bit of leadership in me, and I captained most of the teams and the age groups in the way to when I eventually signed my S form, as it was back then. I'm led to believe. So Alan McLeish had just joined the club as player manager at that point, and I was the first player that he had signed. And his managerial career, and had a great relationship with him, and yeah, really fond memories of my time at Motherwell.
And was it, because obviously with the position you played, was that always the position that you'd felt comfortable with? Was that always where you'd seen yourself playing in defence?
When I played at younger level, it was more midfield, it was left hand side of midfield. I was always I think I was about 6'3" when I was in primary 4, so I was always bigger and stronger and quicker. And I know some people listening might find that a bit bizarre that I was quicker than a lot of people, because towards the end of my career, pace wasn't my forte. But when I was younger, I was quick. So I actually kind of almost formed a bit of a niche when I was younger. I played kind of left wing back, and then it was 3-5-2 formation was quite new to the game at that point. So having somebody that could play left wing back or left centre back was a bonus in the team. So I would like to think when I was younger it was more an attacking midfield role, but then the older I got and the slower I got, the more I kind of ventured back into a nice comfortable centre back role.
So the older you became, the further back down the field you went.
The older I became, the further I got back, and I'd like to think I was down to experience, but it was probably down to a lack of pace and whatever else. But again, I was kind of one of these players. I didn't really mind where I play. In fact, when I was at Stranraer for a period of time, Billy McLaren put me up front on a couple of occasions as that kind of battering ram up front. So that was enjoyable as well. So play anywhere.
And just to touch on also what you're saying about the kind of couple of times up front, how did you feel, as a defender playing up front? Like, did you feel you kind of been let loose? Did you, just kind of go and enjoy it? Or were you still very much thinking, need to kind of cover, need to kind of press a bit?
I enjoyed it because it's good to play an attacking role, because you can think like a defender when you're playing as an attacker, so you know what the defender's moves are and things. But the game was very different then. Even youth players coming through now, and I say this to my own children: you're not a defender, you're not a midfielder, you're not a striker. You're a football player, or you're a netball player. Go and play all the positions and learn all the positions. But back then, that wasn't really the done thing. You were very early on in your career, you were kind of pigeonholed as a left-sided defender or a midfield player or whatever. So, I remember on the odd occasion when I was playing left back, getting moved to the opposite side to play right back, and you just felt like a complete fish out of water. And it was the same position, but just a different side of the park. And
Yeah.
Now you look at the wide players that are playing as inverted wingers or inverted fullbacks and switching sides of the park, and that's all just comes natural to players. But yeah, the minute you got taken out with your little comfort zone, you just felt a bit like a fish out of water. But it was good fun playing up front.
And from Motherwell, before being at Stranraer, you were at Queen of the South, and then obviously what you're saying about enjoying your time at Motherwell, how easy was it to then move on?
I mean, it was never easy to move on. I'd been at the club a long time, and obviously had a lot of friends, and came up through the youth ranks with the likes of Stevie Hamill and Keith Lasley and others that were remaining at the club. But I just as the type of individual I'm always looking for the next step, and how do you progress, and if it's in football or if it's in business or career. Or so when I was playing, was pretty keen on doing coaching badges and so on. So whilst I moved on as a player at Motherwell, I still remained as part of the coaching setup within the community programmes, and was still in and around the club. And I was in and around the club for many years after I'd finished playing. So that kind of softened the blow that I'd left in terms of a player, but I was still in and around the club coaching and learning the other side of the game, which was good. But that move to Queen of the South, it was an interesting one, because again, coming up through the ranks when it's pro youth at the time, and you're kind of focused on the Premier League. I didn't even really know Queen of the South existed when I went to Queen of the South as a kind of smaller lower league club. But when you get in and around the club, it's a phenomenal club, great people, great place to go and play your football. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time. In fact, again, one of the stats I'm still proud of to this day, I'm apparently the youngest ever club captain at the club in history, and I was 17 when I was the club captain. There was a lot of change. John Conley had come in, brought a lot of people from the northeast of England, and so some may say it was the last man standing type. Was one of the reasons I got the captaincy. But to be captain at 17 was just brilliant, and I had a great time there under, it was George Rowe and Ken Eady initially who were the joint managers that took me there, and it's a great club.
And then obviously, as we touched on, being at Stranraer, and you'd stayed at Stranraer for for a wee bit, obviously a bit further afield than the likes of Motherwell, but how did the kind of setup compare? From like going from Motherwell to then Queen of the South and then Stranraer. But the setups kind of back then are they similar?
There were some. Stranraer was slightly different. When I left Motherwell, it was a bit of a crossroads in my career. So I had two real kind of concrete options. I had Inverness were keen to sign me up there and played for a month just to see what it was like. They were in the second division. They were full time. Or Queen of the South. We were also in the second division at the time. They had a bit of a hybrid model where the younger players were full time, older players were part time. And one of the kind of instrumental factors in making that decision to go to Queen of the South was I wanted to go to uni. I wanted to make sure I had a career to fall back on as well as football. So I kind of looked at, you stay full time, you go to Inverness, and you're putting all your eggs in one basket, or you go to Queen of the South, you've got that hybrid where you can go to uni, you can do other things, you can also train. It was sport and exercise science. I done it at uni, so I made a commitment. I would train more hours in the week than a full time player, and I had that kind of hybrid approach. So that was good. But when I went to Stranraer had not long come down from the old first division. They were in the second division with ambitions of going back up. So it was a really good squad. Players like Ian Harty, Paul Walker, Billy McDonald, Billy McLaren there as manager. It was a great club, really good setup. Trained in the Central Belt, travelled down to Stranraer for home games. So really good place. That was kind of first kind of part-time role, if you like, which was just very, very different.
And how, you obviously were saying about it being the kind of part-time role there, how was that for yourself, kind of looking at? Was it an easy transition to kind of look at and easy to fall into that, or did it take a bit of getting used to?
It takes a bit of getting used to it. It's a completely different lifestyle. Not so much for me. I was studying sport. I was still able to train during the day. I was able to. I was young. Had no kids at that point, so I could kind of suit my own schedule. But certainly for older pros who had the day job, training at night, long travels at weekends, it's a phenomenal commitment, and I still doff my cap to people who play part time for years. People like Keith Knox and Alan Jenkins, who are local boys down at Stranraer, and they would do the opposite journey. They would travel up to the Central Belt to train during the week and then back down. So the commitment and dedication of any player at any level in the country is phenomenal, but particularly the part time players. It's part-time in name only. It's a full-time 24/7 commitment, no doubt about it.
And then if we kind of move slightly further forward and going to Hamilton, where you'd spent a kind of number of years there, what was that like? In Hamilton, I'm going to be honest with you, Hamilton is where I remember you as a player.
Right.
Because from a young age, I went to a lot of when I moved out this way, I had kind of friends that would go to like Airdrie games and Hamilton games and things, and I then started just to kind of go with them, which is then what got me right into the kind of football, from the kind of, as you say, the old kind of first division down, now from the kind of championship, which I've continued. So Hamilton was where I remember seeing you as a player.
Mm-hmm. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Hamilton. When I went there, George Fairley and Ronnie McDonald had just bought the club. I think they had been in administration the season before, or a couple of seasons before, whatever. So they were in a period of transition. They were building a new team. Alan Maitland had come in as manager, who still to this day is one of the best managers I've ever worked under. Just a really good person. Tactically, maybe not the best manager in terms of football wise, not the best manager, but in terms of man management and as a person, just found him phenomenal. And they had brought in a lot of what were junior players at the time, players that had come, previously been at Clyde or had stepped up from the juniors, and it was a really good dressing room. Again, they had a model where they had that hybrid approach where there was a lot of young players that were there that were full time, and again, because of my schedule, I could train during the day and with the rest of the boys at night as well. So it was a really good club. Obviously, we went up that first year. That was the infamous year where Morton had that famous collapse when they were, flying away with the league by the turn of the year and just fell away. And it was ourselves and Airdrie that ended up going up and promoted into the first division. But I thought it was a great club. In fact, one of the main kind of selling points and the reasons I went to Hamilton was at the time they had aspirations of becoming almost adopting the Scandinavian model of that hybrid full-time, part-time, where they would train 4 nights a week and players would effectively be full-time but would have the opportunity to do, explore other interests as well. And that really appealed to me, something a bit different. It kind of suited my lifestyle, suited my ambition, but it never ever came to fruition. 6 months later, they were already making moves to go full time again. Fully full time rather than the hybrid. So, but that was a great team that we had, and a great dressing room. Good players like Brian Carrigan, who's just a wonderful football player, and good experienced pros like Stevie Thompson at the back. And I'd watched one of your previous episodes with Todd Lumsden, who I played with at that time. David McEwen in goals. Just a really good Ricky Waddle, Mark Corcoran. Just a right good squad of people. And then you had the Jose Katongos of this world coming into the group. So that was a really, really good time. And not only did we go up, but then consolidated and kicked on and had a good couple of seasons in the first division, getting to the Challenge Cup final. And yeah, really, really enjoyed that period.
And just kind of touching the Hamilton aspect, from your experience and seeing, where the club eventually did go, up into the SPL, and you think of the kind of Alex Neil years, if you like, when they were doing really well, to then get back down to now being at League One. Is that something that surprised you?
It doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me from the point of view where, again, going back to the kind of the games changed. So I think Hamilton have done really well to stick to their principles of, the focus on the academy. And I remember when Alec Neil took the job to become the manager. And I'm not talking out of turn, but I think he was down to 3 that were interviewed for the role, but he was the only manager that was willing to accept a budget that had an academy budget that was bigger than a first team budget. The club were all about the academy, and when I played there, James MacArthur was in the team. I played in the same game when he made his debut at Broadwood against Clyde, and James McCarthy was coming up through the ranks. Brian Easton was, a couple of years below us, but was starting to be, when we put down the plastic pitch, the first team would train on one side and the 18s would train in the other, and Eastie was playing at that level, so you could see good players coming through. So I think the biggest challenge that Hamilton have now is that the model has changed, whereby they're losing good young players at 11, 12, 13, 14 to the English clubs, rather than losing clubs or losing players to these clubs who've made 100 first team appearances. Hamilton get the benefit. These James MacArthur, McCarthy's and Eastons go down as established first team players for good money, rather than clubs coming and cherry picking the best talent for compensation packages. So I think that's ultimately that influences and impacts on the business model of Hamilton. So I'm not surprised to see the demise. It saddens me, and I do I cover games most weekends for Opta and Stats Perform. So I still watch a lot of the Hamilton games, and the right good squad this year. And but for Falkirk would probably be a shoe-in for promotion. I think it'll only be a matter of time before they certainly get back to Championship. Maybe not getting to winning 1-0 at Celtic Park to go top of the league and the Premier League anytime soon, but they'll definitely be back in the Championship soon.
Yeah, and it's a fair point, because Hamilton, who I've had one of the directors on the podcast, and one of the things that I noticed when I was at the stadium to interview him was when he took us a walk round and showed us one of the things that they were, very proud of was the statistics and the success that their youth teams have had. Obviously still till now, where they've been getting to, Champions League football and things like that, which is phenomenal. But then I remember bumping into the director at their away game with Stirling Albion, just as the transfer window was closing in the summer, and they had lost one of the youngsters who had been floating about the first team. Was it Sheffield Wednesday? Sheffield United?
Sheffield United, yeah,
Yeah.
the boy Oni.
Yeah, who had come in. And, just to kind of obviously further kind of go on what you're saying, like he was 17 and they never really got first team level. Although he had been about the first team and the fans took to him really, really quickly, but hadn't really established or created much there because he never had the time, because then they've sold him. And obviously rightly so, but down to a club that are now going to develop him in their way, but they've not had the benefit out of the kind of work that's been put in.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of epitomises where you compare that scenario to McCarthy and MacArthur playing 100 odd first team games and going down as established players, and no idea what the fees were involved of recent players moving down, but back then it was it was good money, and that was money that could be reinvested into the club. And I think it's commendable though that they still, you see the UEFA Youth League, that they're, the 4-each game at Douglas Park. I mean, just brilliant that they're competing at that level, and the club, rightly so, are hugely proud. And George Kearns does a great job there, and a few players I've either played with or against are in there as academy coaches, and it's a real good model of a community club in action. They've got the community, they've got the academy, they've got the first team, they've got notorious for having a really good women's section and women's teams, and the club functions well on the park that way.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on the Falkirk aspect, because I'll be honest, I was pretty surprised as to how much Falkirk seem to have steamrolled through. What is it now? 25 games.
25 games unbeaten. Yeah,
Yeah.
talking about the League One Invincibles already.
And I've seen them a couple of times this season. I'm going to be honest and say, to the surprise, I've been impressed. Like, you watch them in a game and none of the players really put much of a foot wrong. Whereas when you compare it to other games, I've been to, several games where you see, players making a mistake that's maybe not cost a goal, but it's definitely put them under pressure. But at Falkirk, you're just not seeing it.
Yeah, I've got a good young squad of hungry players, and even they've got a good social media team there, because you see a lot of social media activity, and Sam Wardrobe's doing his SPFL bit just now, no rest for the wicked, and an insight. I look behind the curtain of Falkirk, and you just get the sense that the club is buoyant, as it would be a 25-game unbeaten run, but you just get a sense that for probably for the first time in a long time, everybody in the club is on the same page, and they're pulling in the same direction, and that's is it chicken or egg scenario? Is it because the team are doing well, or are the team doing well because behind the scenes everything seems to be running smoothly? I know the CEO Jamie Swinney there, who's doing a great job, and the club are clearly developing on and off the park. So which is great to see, because I'm we'll come on to it later about Scottish football, where Scottish football is. My glass is more than half full when it comes to Scottish football. I think we've got a great product, and we need clubs like Falkirk and Dunfermline and the Airdries of this world. We need these clubs to be firing all cylinders. But I think it's great to see Falkirk coming back up the leagues.
Yeah, and just to maybe take the kind of back step across now with yourself, because Hamilton eventually, your time there coming to the end, and then it was Partick Thistle from there. And how, with the kind of success that you had at Hamilton and the kind of amount of games you'd played, how was that to leave that? Was that easy or was it difficult?
Um, it's never easy to leave a club, but when I did leave, it was Billy Reid was the manager at the time, and he's phenomenal career, assistant manager at Brighton and Chelsea and so on, and really knew his stuff. I think it's fair to say we probably didn't have the best of relationships. We just didn't really see eye to eye as people. So there was at the time when I moved on, I was probably quite happy to move on, and Billy was probably quite happy to see the back of me. You know that they had cover, and I was playing the same position as Mark McLaughlin, who great big player, and when I was playing in the first division, he was playing left back, I was playing left centre back, and then they moved him in as centre back when I kind of fell out the team towards the end of my period there. So I I just always, when I left Motherwell, I had the opportunity. John Lambie was keen to take me in at Partick, and I decided to go down a different path for various different reasons. But I always kind of felt I'd unfinished business, and the minute I knew that Partick Thistle were keen, I was more excited about the new chapter than looking back or sad to be leaving Hamilton. But certainly left a good dressing room and a good team. But I was delighted to go and join Dick Campbell and his team at Thistle.
Because I suppose, and the reason I'd kind of used the word of, the kind of happy or unhappy, is I do often kind of wonder, I know obviously in a sense it's working, that's how you're earning a living, not fully as I appreciate, but that's how, part of your money's being earned is also playing football. Is it so much like a job, or, do a lot of people kind of treat it as, this is a job, this is the next opportunity in that job ladder, and this is where I go? Or is it difficult to kind of put that barrier up, with you being around these players and coming through kind of tough times, good times, and that with them? Is it then difficult to move on from that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an interesting question because as much as I love playing football and privileged to do it and wouldn't change a thing, but I never ever looked upon it as a job, and I was always of the mindset that it's a short career and it's not forever. So I kind of just enjoyed it while I was there, but all the while I was working on, or positioning myself to do other things out with football, because you're a long time retired from playing the game. So I never really looked at it as the kind of the ruthless industry or business, and some people might think that's a bit of a negative, but I just try to enjoy it rather than get caught up in it all. I in my whole career never once went and chapped the manager's door to ask why I wasn't playing, because there was no, what's the point? You're not going to benefit from that, because you're either not playing because you're not in form, you're injured, you're suspended, or the manager wants to go down a different route, whether it's a formational tactical thing or there's somebody ahead of you in the pecking order. It's not rocket science to understand why you're out the team. So I was never that type of person. I just always approached it as just work as hard as I possibly can and make sure. I remember when I was at Hamilton, I got banned from going to the gym at one point because they thought I was training too much, because I just loved training, and I loved looking after myself and putting myself in the best position and condition possible. So when I was out the team, I would go into the gym, train in the morning, and then go out and train 10 till 12 with the players, and then come back and get lunch, and we do an afternoon session, and I would go to the gym after training. So I just looked at it as a 9 to 5 job, which now it is. Players and clubs are doing that. That's widely accepted. But at the time, full time football was, you would train Monday, Tuesday, 10 till 12. You'd be off Wednesday, and you'd train Thursday, Friday, 10 till 12. And even then, a Friday was a bit of a lesser relaxed session before the game in the Saturday. So it wasn't in my book full time. So I'd always be doing that wee bit extra. But just because I enjoyed it, and I
Yeah.
loved it, knowing fine well that it was a short career.
And then as we say about the going to Partick Thistle, what was that experience like? You always kind of read the stories about the management and stuff, which I'm not saying in a negative sense, but obviously it was a kind of Marmite scenario, I suppose. And how did you find that?
Marmite's a great description because Dick Campbell is he's just Dick Campbell. He's larger than life. He's I actually went to through friends that I used to work with. Went to Inverkeithing Bowling Club on the 3rd of December to a fundraising event, and Dick Campbell was one of the after dinner speakers. It was a brunch thing on a Sunday, and he's just never changed. He's the same. He was prowling up and down the bowling club like he did in the changing rooms, and he's just a larger than life character, but a great person. But it's hard to describe his management style. He's not a tactician. He's not a he's not a baller and shouter. He just has his own way of motivating people. And Jimmy Bone was his assistant. He was the the kind of tactician. He would kind of set up all the set pieces and all the kind of intricacies of how you would play. Whereas Dick Campbell was he was just a comedian. But that could be frustrating as well at times. That I remember the club captain Jimmy Gibson at times, sitting at 10-2 and no sign of the gaffer, and Jimmy as the captain would go into his office, chap him, where is he? Is he coming through to speak to the team before we get changed or whatever? And he was sitting watching his horses. He had a horse running at 10-2 and he'd been in 15 minutes, and just that type of stuff. It's just bizarre, but in a really nice way. He was just a lovely guy to work with.
Because I'd imagine as well when you kind of hear that, he's watching the horses burn in 15 minutes. I mean, I don't really know there's much you can answer to that.
There's nothing you can do. Jimmy would come in and we just have a chat amongst ourselves and get ourselves all sorted until the gaffer was ready. But he's I'm saying that portraying him as a bit more of a kind of relaxed figure. There is absolutely no doubt. He was talking at the 3rd of December there. He's 8 managerial games short of Jock Stein's record. And you don't have that longevity in the game and work with the players that he's worked with, and take our growth to as he describes it, the edge of immortality, with what they almost done in terms of the Premier League. You don't do that if you don't know your stuff. So I'm absolutely not doubting his football knowledge, and he's been an assessor on licensed courses at the Scottish FA for years, or was for years. He's a well respected and thought of coach within the game, but just a larger than life figure as well.
But do you not feel just when you're saying that, and obviously, when you see, kind of interviews that he's done, things like that, there is, you can tell the passion, but there is also that kind of joking side and things. And do you not think that that's so refreshing to kind of see, and to see what he's achieved in the game, when you then compare it to, certain managers who are very straight down the line, very serious, there's no laughs, there's no jokes. And I think for me, it's quite refreshing to see, it's refreshing to hear about, it's refreshing to watch as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that Campbell is refreshing, and what you see is what you get. He calls a spade, and he talks about his knuckle duster and his feather duster, and a time to work and a time to play, and all these quirks, and he's refreshing to be. And I like that. That's part of what I like about Scottish football. It is still real. It's raw. It's it's emotive, and recently the my old club Marvin Bartley interview that went viral when he was talking about players playing in Xbox and so on, and that blew out of all sorts of proportion because of that interview. But it was from the heart. It was raw. It was just a kind of an insight into how he manages. Brilliant. I love all that. I absolutely love to see what goes on behind the scenes.
And I think obviously we're doing this, obviously with a host of people on, there's still a host of kind of like players, managers, directors, things that I'm in kind of frequent contact with. And through doing this, though, what's been quite strange is there's some who have came on, they've done an interview which I've been really appreciative of, and then now not really been any contact or any need for it kind of afterwards, whereas there's been some that I've kind of built up a bit of friendship, bit of relationship with. And the reason I say this is because it was Darren Young, who's somebody that it came on kind of early days in this, and I got on absolutely phenomenal with. And the funny thing was, we were having a discussion, and we were comparing Football Manager teams. And at one point, when we were discussing this, I stopped and went, I mean, you do this in real life. Is this not like, a busman's holiday for you? Like, what's the, and he's like, yeah, but sometimes I use it, and I've spoke to him, so saying this is okay. I've used it to scout players, which I just found phenomenal.
That's definitely a new technique, that.
I mean, I don't think, to be fair, that he has signed anybody from just Football Manager before anybody kind of goes in and edits their stats on it. But I think he says he's seen players on it, and that has maybe made him go, oh, let's have a look at that. And then obviously sent kind of, the kind of scouting side of it was kind of something that he kind of spoke about. But I just found it strange to think, and it's not just him, because in any of discussions with people, and I've had other kind of managing things saying about playing FIFA or doing this, and I just think, for me, I'm never going to manage a football team, despite thinking that my football management resume would be good enough to do it. So that's what I'll do, and I'll do that. But or FIFA, I've never played at a kind of high standard or level. So again, that's the kind of doing that. But I think these are people that playing, even when you go to the kind of top end of the game, you're kind of £500,000 a kind of week earners. They'll sit and play FIFA or play Football Manager, and I'm like, but you're living the life. Why? I do it because I'm never going to catch that kind of brass ring. You're living that life already. What would be the need?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never been a gamer. I've never played Champ Manager or FIFA. Although I do with colleagues play fantasy football, so that end up getting hooked on that and watching match of the day to see how your team have performed, rather than being able to sit and relax and watch the game. So I can see it from that point of view. But I think that story you're telling about Darren Young, that whilst it seems a bit bizarre and a bit strange, it epitomises the lengths that committed managers go to try and get that extra 2 or 3%. Again, the commitment and dedication of people like Darren Young is just phenomenal. Part-time managers with full-time day jobs, but they are at every game going. They are constantly looking for that additional edge over their rivals, and they'll explore absolutely every avenue possible.
And just to kind of talk in the kind of Darren Young and it's Stirling, and I think the kind of job that he done there has been phenomenal. When they moved up the divisions, I think they signed a few players that wasn't a great amount of signings that came in. Have got a kind of small squad when you compare it to the likes of Falkirks and Hamilton, but where I think there's been a few question marks on how well they're doing, I think in reality they're 5 points away from the playoffs.
Yeah, that's been a phenomenal rise, and Stirling Albion were always. Remember when John Philbin went there as manager, when he left Motherwell, and Brian Martin was there, and a few other boys that left Motherwell went there. They were full time at the time. They were Championship and an ambitious club and a big club. So to see them getting back to the levels that they should be at as a minimum is good from the club's point of view. But you're right, and I think managers like Darren Young, I think when you're at that level and it's part time, your recruitment is hugely important. You sign the right players, limited budgets, tight budgets, competitive market. But I think it's the man management piece. That's the difference between a successful manager at that part-time level than an unsuccessful manager. It's the people piece, and it's how much can you get out, because the technical tactical part of the game is limited because your time is limited with the players. It's more about motivating, getting the right squads, managing to get, as Billy McLaren would always talk about, squeezing the pips, getting that last little bit out of each player that you have at your disposal, and managers like, and I don't know Darren particularly well. I played at Thistle with Derek, his brother, who was a lively character and a great lad as well. So I'm sure Darren's the same. But his track record, even what he done at East Fife as well, he was hugely impressive there.
And
I think did he have a stint in Rovers as well? Was
he did. He won the league with Albion Rovers, as well, which again is probably frightening the rest of the discussion him and I had to see where he had took Albion Rovers, which in reality wasn't that. I think footballing wise it was a lifetime ago, but in reality it wasn't that long ago to see where the likes of Albion Rovers are now, in the position that they're in, which is frightening to see the kind of downfall from that side, which has been a pretty much full cycle, from being at the kind of highs of winning the league and doing really well to now being in the kind of lowland leagues.
Yeah, that's a bit of a fall from grace for Albion Rovers. But we'll come on to it. I'm a huge fan of the pyramid, and I know there are some stories. Former club of mine, Cowdenbeath, who have now dropped out, and the Brecons of this world, and a lot of these clubs have dropped out. Even going back to East Stirling, I think we're the first to drop out the senior setup as it was SPFL setup, and not managed to make their way back. It just shows how competitive it is once you. But I think high tide raises all boats and all that. I think when the structure and the pyramid is in place, I think it will improve the quality and standard of the game. Because when I played, no disrespect to the Albion Rovers or the East Stirlings of this world, but there was all that kind of question marks around how ambitious were they as clubs. You heard all the story of the minimal fees that they were paying their players because they had that safety net of I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of hard-working people at these clubs, so I don't want to speak ill of the clubs at all. But what's the worst thing that can happen? We can be 42nd out of the 42 clubs, but we'll still remain in the division, and we're not going to we'll still get our payments. Whereas now there is that safety net is now gone, which I think is a good thing.
And and then I suppose to kind of just talk on the pyramid system, and it's obviously a question that I've asked, in a discussion I've had with every guest that's been on, along with discussions that I've had with other kind of footballing people, whether it be players, managers, whatever else, off camera. And the kind of consensus that I've had from people is the idea behind it's great, but how to leave the lowland leagues and move up is not. And I think it was Kevin Mackey that had been on, and he went right into how, and I didn't realise this, and I can speak about this because he said it on the podcast. It's live. It's up now, but that they won the league and don't get paid any money for winning the league. They then lost in the playoffs to get in for promotion, but I've kind of then sat still at status quo because they've won the league but gained no promotion, nor no monetary value for winning that. And I suppose this season as well, they're having another kind of phenomenal season in that league. But that was that was kind of his outlook on it, was where the issues were. Because I think he was quite vocal about it as well. I think there was pieces out in like newspapers and stuff with interviews and stuff he'd done round about the time of the podcast as well.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I think the principle behind the pyramid is right. I think it's the right thing to do, but we are definitely in that kind of grey area just now where it's not quite settled down yet. So there are a few anomalies within the system, which things like was it Spartans who went up because Auchinleck didn't meet the licensing standard or whatever, so couldn't go up, so they can almost got a bit of a bye through the playoffs. So there are these kind of anomalies that are in the system at the minute that will take time to settle down. You've got your Glen Aftons, attracting players like Kyle Lafferty and so on, ambitious clubs who are and even the way that particularly the pyramid leagues are structured, they've not quite settled down, and clubs haven't quite found their level yet, in my opinion. So I think that will come. So yeah, we're definitely in a bit of a grey area where the anomalies are popping up all over the place that people may question the methodology behind it. But I think it's absolutely right that ambitious clubs at whatever level of the pyramid have an open door and an opportunity to progress to a level that they can strive to. Ambitious, forward-thinking clubs should absolutely have an open door to progress.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And obviously, that's a lot of football that I'll kind of travel about in the weeks and go and watch. And I'm very honest with this, and I won't kind of pick specifics out, but you see some outstanding games, better than some of the games I've watched in the telly. I'm not going to lie here and say I've never sat there at half time and thought, we've got another half of this to go. Now, but you get that at every level. But I think that the one thing that I always, and I kind of notice a lot, that you can see the clubs who do have that full ambition to progress, to move on. And I think, and maybe not for every club, and I wouldn't be fair in saying that, but there's certain ones where you go to the ground, or you kind of talk to fans, or you talk to coaching staff, management, owners, and you can see there's this belief, there's this ambition. They've maybe got, whether it be a slight bit of investment, or they've maybe got something there back. And I'm not saying that money is everything around it. They've got the kind of passion from the fans, and you can see there's a real feel-good factor around some of the clubs. But then there's others, and you kind of turn up to, and it's just like there's that, yeah, we know we're going to finish kind of the lower end, and it is what it is. And that's, and for me, I think I've very much noticed that, there seems to be the ambitious clubs, and then clubs that don't really want to go anywhere. And a few of them have kind of said, and again, I won't kind of go into the club specifically, but yeah, if we get promoted, though, the money that we would need to find to do this and to do that could end up sending us bust, because they don't have a proper structure or a kind of mainframe in place.
Yeah, and I think that's still part of that kind of grey area. I think that I think clubs will settle down. They will find their level. They will, be at a level that they're comfortable with, that matches their ambition. And we're still at the place where a lot of these kind of senior clubs, or SPFL clubs as we've known them, they've built a business model on almost a guarantee that they would get that resource coming in. And you drop out the SPFL leagues, and all of a sudden you don't have that resource, and that's pretty challenging for some of these clubs. But the longer that the pyramid structure beds in, and clubs budget and manage their aspirations accordingly, I think we'll get to the point where everybody finds a level. I just look at the clubs that have come through, your Coles, your Kelties, Spartans, Bonnyrigg. I was at the Clyde Bonnyrigg game at Hamilton last weekend, and clubs like that are bringing a lot of positivity to the SPFL leagues. So I think they're more than welcome in those top leagues. And I mentioned that cover games for Opta and Stats Perform. I covered one of the Albion Rovers games in the playoffs when they ultimately got relegated, and then this season I was at one of their first games against Dunfermline in the Challenge Cup, and almost kind of expecting to go to Clifton Hill and there to be doom and gloom everywhere because they had fallen out of the league, and a travesty, a club with that heritage, and I couldn't have been further from the truth. Actually, there just seemed to be a real upbeat, positive attitude of almost one of, we're in a league that we can go and win. There's we've got something to play for. We can go and try and win a league. Now, I know that it's not transpired the way they would have hoped, but I even think there's no bad thing dropping out the division to then realign your ambition and come back again stronger. I think that'll be healthy for the game. Now, the accountants at these clubs and the finance directors probably wouldn't agree with that when you look at the balance sheet and what that costs. But I think from a footballing point of view, it's very positive.
And, sorry, funny you say, 'cause the two games you mentioned there, I was actually at both. I went to both playoff games. My dad's got a season ticket to Albion Rovers, and I did follow their kind of playoff and then beginning of the season. And I was very much in the same view as yourself when I went there. I expected there to be a bit, downtrodden, downhearted. How many fans are going to turn up? Is it going to be the old man and his dog tail? And it wasn't just that they turned up, but they were really passionate about it. I was also at their game against Kilmarnock, and I've got to add, they were very unlucky to take nothing away from that game, but there just did seem to be this whole belief surrounding progression. And yeah, I agree, in that scenario, it's not kind of came to fruition. I suppose many clubs will be in that situation, but and the reason I kind of brought it up is because Spartans, when I'd went there and I'd watched them against Albion Rovers, the setup they've got there's phenomenal, and I think far too good, in my opinion, to be kicking about, non-league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. The setup at Spartans is phenomenal, and it's the wider club as well. It's the community outreach programs. It's what they do in their local community. It's everything about the club, the values, and now they have a first team. I covered and been to a few of the women's games. Covered the Partick Thistle Spartans women's team, and again they've got a good setup from the women's side of the game, and every facet of the club, to me, as you said there, just demonstrates that they are operating above the level that they currently find themselves in, and I think they're a huge asset to the senior game or the SPFL leagues.
And just to then kind of touch on it, when you look at Spartans, I'd obviously seen them in the playoff games. I'm going to be very honest and say, yeah, they won the game and probably the two legs, and probably rightly so, over the two legs. But I never expected from them what they've produced so far this season. I think they're sitting at the second in the league at the moment. They're sitting right up there in the playoffs so far in League Two, with clear ambition to progress further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the breath of fresh air that the pyramid brings. New clubs with new ambition and well run clubs at that. The way Spartans are run from top to bottom, and in my day job we do a lot of work with clubs and a lot of work with community clubs and outreach programs and so on, and develop and investing in infrastructure and of the game at grassroots and community level, and Spartans have been a shining light at that level of the game for years, and what you're seeing now of what's on the park is just replicating the ambition and the real good strides that they've made off the park within the community for years. So I think they're a breath of fresh air.
And when you look at, say, that league, obviously with the kind of top four, I think you've got Stenhousemuir, who are on an incredible run. You've got Spartans, Dumbarton, and Peterhead, I believe, all kind of kicking about there. Would you expect is there any team there that you would expect to win that league? Do you think Stenhousemuir have kind of got it? Do you think there's still a...
Yeah,
obviously,
I think
we can look back to the infamous Morton, running away with the league at Christmas and then what happened there. So
yeah.
The Stenhousemuir kind of gap just now isn't always a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Morton examples are good enough. Just what can happen. I've only seen Stenny once or twice this season. I think they've got too much. I know Brown Ferguson, assistant manager, there well. I played with him at both Partick and Hamilton, and in fact he was a colleague at Sport Scotland for years as well. He's still there working in the institute over at Oriam, and I think they'll have too much. I think they'll end up winning it. And winning it by a distance. Good setup, good management team, good players. The surprise for me in that league is just where Clyde are down the bottom of the pile. And again, a reference to the game of being at Hamilton, seeing Clyde Bonnyrigg at the weekend, and that first 45 minutes, they had a couple of new centre backs playing, and Ray Grant was back after his long-term injury in the middle of the park. But that first 45 minutes, they did not look like a team that were at the bottom of the division. Kind of fell away from things second half, and Bonnyrigg got a couple of late goals, but Clyde were never in any danger of losing that. So the surprise for me in that division is just where Clyde are at. And I think Alan Maitland's in there as director of football, and Ian McCall, experienced manager. They'll get out, but it's whether they get out quick enough is the problem, because they're cut adrift.
And Joe, one thing just to mention, I seen Clyde a bit earlier in the season before a lot of the changes had come in, and one of the surprises to me was, even at the stadium, now a totally different stadium from what we kind of remember Clyde as having, they still had a great support.
Yep.
And I'll be honest and say that was, when I turned up, that was my first kind of shock. And it's of no disrespect to the club. It was just, how many clubs would you see being able to, not be in their kind of normal stadium, and you kind of see things dying down supporter-wise, but they still had a great kind of passionate, loud support through the entirety of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was exactly the same at the weekend. In fact, I think if I remember rightly, the crowd was 793, which is not huge, but there was a passionate, vocal, noisy support. Given where they are in the league, given that they're at yet another stadium, it's a while since I've had somewhere to call home. Even Broadwood wasn't really home.
Yeah.
For years. So fair play to them, and they're another big club that would be nice to see. When I was at Queen of the South and playing in the second division, they won that league with Paddy Keogh and David Dunn, and a right good side back in the day. And Scottish football needs a strong Clyde as well in there.
And I suppose that's the thing when you look as well, and just to kind of slide back slightly to the pyramid system, which when you look at everything, and I agree in regards to Clyde and their kind of history and what they've done, and these teams that coming in, I've got ambition. If we take Spartans as the kind of most recent example, but I think probably the one thing is that teams are going to need to fall to see these teams coming up, which I know is part and parcel of the game, but I think it's probably the distance some of these teams would fall from dropping out of League Two to go into the Lowland, because off the top of my head, I don't think we've seen a team drop out and come back.
No, I think Brechin have been close to coming back. I think they're the closest that have come back. But I agree, and again, supporters and people working in those clubs might not agree. But I think that's healthy competition. I think that drives standards. I think there's not a club that's come into the SPFL leagues and not brought something. The journey Cove have been on has been interesting and fascinating to watch. Kelty the same, with the owners then moving to Raith Rovers and seeing what's happening there, and chatted about Spartans and Bonnyrigg as well. Again, another club with a huge community arm of the club that does a lot of really good work within the community. Again, another breath of fresh air. So I think it's hugely encouraging. But these clubs, the Cowdenbeaths and the Brechins and the East Stirlings and Albion Rovers and so on, just need to regroup and come back strong. And I think when they do come back, I think they will be back stronger, because they'll have a more robust business model, and they will be more prepared. I think when they come back.
And and I do agree with kind of when you saying earlier about the in regards to some teams maybe not having the full level of ambition, and knowing if we finish at the bottom of this pile, we're still in that pile come next season. And maybe not all teams having that kind of proper structure in place and just jumping one season to one season with nothing at the back, which, as I say, because of some of these clubs that I've been about too, you can see the clubs that have went down and are properly putting their business model in place, and I've got something. And Brechin, being the the kind of perfect example. As I say, Kevin Mackey, I've spoke to a number of occasions, and you can see what they're building there, what they're looking to do, where their ambition is. Having spoken with people at Albion Rovers on and off the podcast, you can see they're still finding their feet as to where they fit in. And I'll be honest in saying, maybe people not like to hear it, but you can see obviously this season their ambition's gone because they made it very clear there would be no signings going into the club, which you can only imagine is because they're trying to build for next season, which would make sense. But then you think, where does that kind of leave your supporters looking? Because I'll tell you what, it's the few games that I've been to this season, they've been one of the most inconsistent teams I think I've seen. I think I've seen them early in the season, and they looked really, really good, looked really strong, and I thought, do you know what, they could be there or thereabouts. I always fancied East Kilbride to kind of run away with the league. But then I seen them a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, this can't be the same group of players that I watched when they played up at University of Stirling on the telly and had a phenomenal 90 minutes. And then you looked, and I think from talking to supporters, it would, that was the feeling. It was just the inconsistency of youth. But you can see they've obviously set up for the next season, because there's Sandy has signed a contract extension there. So you can see that's also what they're now beginning to do, is have that structure in place to then try and progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm the same. Saw them early on in the season, then saw them in the cup live on the TV, and when I see the league table, I'm baffled as to where they find themselves currently, given what I've seen. But it's, yeah, you're right, it's that inconsistency of youth. But they'll get their house in order and come back, particularly by a manager like Sandy Clark at the helm, somebody with that experience. They'll get it right, no question about it.
And just the kind of last part on it, I think it was probably highly unlucky, Albion Rovers, because I think the general consensus around the club was, had Sandy come in a handful of games earlier than he did, I think the kind of general feeling around the club was that they would probably not have been in danger of going down. I think some of the results he put in the close run of the season was phenomenal. As I say, like the kind of Stirling Albion, who had won the league that year, they went to Stirling Albion and hammered them, and I think there was a kind of good feeling around it from, as I say, from kind of seeing it and speaking to some of them, to them be. But I think it also shows you how competitive that league is, because to have seen them in the games that we've seen them in, to then see where they're at in the league, but then went out and beat East Kilbride the other week.
Yeah, they've got good players there.
But just because I do really appreciate the time you've took to come on, and I know we've probably veered on and off of many different stuff. But just in the kind of last part here, with your own career, and I know obviously when we had went through the kind of some of the clubs where you'd been at, when it was probably time to, for the kind of playing career to finish, how was that kind of final season? Because that was at Cowdenbeath.
I went and played, helped Danny Lennon out for not quite the full season. One of the questions that you continue to get asked is, do you miss it? Do you miss playing? And I guess I've been fortunate that I'm still involved in football, and I have been in many different guises, from head of sports science at Partick Thistle to now the chief executive of the Scottish Football Partnership Trust, and I've doing bits and pieces for Opta and so on. So I've always been involved in the game. So I've always had my football fix, and I always. I mentioned earlier on just the type of person I'm always looking at the next step and where am I going next and how am I plotting that journey. And it might be next month, it might be in 4 or 5 years' time. But I always like to try and plan ahead. So not quite my motivation, but I ended up finishing playing when I was 29 professionally, and I kind of got to that point of, you're throughout your whole career, you're always trying to push yourself and move to that next level. What's next? If you're in the second division, can you get to the first division? If you're in the championship, can you get to the Premier League? Or, whatever club you're at, can you get to the next level or size of club? And when I got to that point of kind of being 29, and I was lucky throughout my career with injuries, didn't really have any injuries of note. But I just got to the point of, I'm probably not going to go any higher in the game. So I've kind of almost done what I wanted to do in terms of playing, but I always had ambition to, get involved in the administration side of the game and the coaching side of the game and sports science and so on. So keeping that was definitely a nice way for me to transition from a player into another role. And I've always worked in sport. 10 years at Sport Scotland, working as a partnership and a lead manager, working with different governing bodies, Olympic, Commonwealth, sports, and so on. So I've always been in and around sporting environments, and I compete on my bike, do a lot of cycling now, and like to race through the Dolomites in my bike. So I've still got a bit of competitiveness in me. So I don't miss it, and I didn't find it difficult to transition out of being a player because I always had something else to go into, which was fortunate. And I know not many people, or a lot of people are fortunate enough to have that, and that was critical. That was a blessing to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, and I'll not kind of pull the individuals out in this, but there has been some that I've had on the podcast and we've discussed stuff, and there's been a few whose careers have maybe came to an abrupt end, and they've never really thought of what the next step was ever going to be, and they've then had that period of time where they've felt very kind of downtrodden, quite lost, and where do I go from here? But it's not actually been as many that I've spoken with in this respect, where they've been like, yeah, do you know what? My career was coming to an end and I was fine because I had X, Y, and Z. And I'll be honest and say it probably sounds very similar to Des McKeown, who has been on, was very much, I played for loving the game and it came to an end. And it was very kind of similar also with the kind of things that he'd been on and kind of remained in and around the game. Was very much kind of the similar answer from yourself, where when I compared to some who, so I was thinking of the nice way to say this, but who are maybe slightly younger.
That's all right. Of that vintage, that's fine.
But it was, I'll be honest, it's strange to, Gordon Smith, when he was on, he kind of spoke about, when you were talking about, you train from this time to this time, and then, players would go here and they would go to, pubs, they'd go to dog racing, they'd go golfing, they'd go to this. I just went and got a job and I just worked because I wanted to have something to fall back on. But then when there's been players that have maybe been, now probably not out the game too long, but were very much, I didn't know what I was going to go and do. Had no idea. And just kind of maybe stumbled about for a couple of years until they found where their kind of footing was. But in remaining in the game and in doing what you've been doing, do you still feel that, passion for the game that you probably had when you played?
Absolutely, yeah. And see, just going back to that, the comments you made there around, a similar answer from somebody like Des and others who have maybe had come to an abrupt end. I think that's a cultural thing within the game in this country, and it's changing for the better. But when I came through and when I was playing, I think it's safe to say that it was frowned upon if you had any other interests out with the game. If you had any other interests, or if you were pursuing any other avenues at the same time, the perception was that you were not committed enough to football. And, I could never ever buy into that mindset, which is why I always had parallel careers at every stage and I would say that, if you were to do a straw poll and you were to ask people, what was Sandy Hodge like as a player, I don't think anybody would turn around and say he was the best player I ever played with, but I think they would turn around and say, he was a good person, he gave his all, he worked hard and he gave himself the best chance possible. So I didn't sacrifice that, but I had parallel careers, and it's definitely changing now with transition events to support people making that transition in the with careers coming to abrupt end. There's obviously the health and well-being and welfare factor, which is now being more supported than it ever was, which is all good. So I think the culture in football has definitely got a huge responsibility from that respect. To go on to your second question here around the passion, my passion has never waned at all for Scottish football and football in general, and I'm the biggest advocate of the Scottish game. And if you were to ask me the question of what would be the one thing you would change in Scottish football if you could, there's the VAR debate that's raging on just now. There's our young kids getting enough first team football? Do we need a reserve league? Do we need coach teams in the lower leagues or whatever? The one thing I would like to be able to flick with a light switch is the culture and the mindset of Scottish football. See if we could start talking up our game rather than talking about what our game doesn't do. I think we've got a phenomenal product. We've got a men's and women's national team who are doing phenomenally well. Women's team have just come through a fairly disappointing campaign, but are continually making strides and progressing. The girls' and women's games flourishing, which is great to see. Men's team qualifying for the Euros, co-hosting the next Euros. The coefficient going through the roof. Clubs doing well in the Premier League, competitive Premier League, top and bottom, right the way down to what we've been discussing around Championship and down. We've got a phenomenal product, and you look at the SPFL and some of the work they do, the organisation I work for, the Scottish Football Partnership Trust. We've invested 300 grand into community and grassroots football around girls and women's football over the last few years. We're investing £500,000 into infrastructure to support grassroots. We've got an initiative just now in partnership with the UEFA Foundation for Children, supporting 75 clubs to offset the cost of living to families who have been disproportionately affected with the cost of living. There's a multitude of really good initiatives out there. You look at the SPFL and SPFL Trust's Twitter feed over December, and the festive friends and elderly people coming together. Football plays a massive part in the fabric of this country, and we should be talking it up more. The product in the park, I think, is great.
Yep.
And the ripple effect into communities, I think, is second to none as well. So there's no other sport that can come close to it in that respect. And that feeds my, to answer the question directly, that feeds my enthusiasm and appetite for the game when I see what it's doing indirectly and directly for communities.
And just on what you were saying there, and I suppose the one part that I would ask would be that, and I'm in very much agreement with you. I'm very honest in this and say that I would go to a lot of maybe slightly busier grounds around the country, and then I started to, as I say, the kind of friends that I had at the time were all going to Airdrie games or Hamilton games or Rovers games, and I just kind of started going along, maybe never specifically followed one continuously. And then when I kind of finished school and went back to kind of going to these kind of slightly larger grounds again, and it then was COVID had hit, and obviously everybody was in the house. I get quite bored. I says, I wonder what it'd be like to go and set up a football podcast. How easy would that be? And I kind of done a bit of digging and looking at it, and it was maybe slightly more difficult than I'd envisioned. But then, fast forward a bit, that's what I'd started to do. Now, there's a purpose of me saying this, so that's what I kind of started to do. And what I then began to do was go around a lot more different, lower league grounds, clubs, from the kind of lowland and highland leagues, up to the the Championship and even some of the kind of maybe the bottom half sides, if you like, in the SPL, just based on where they're sitting at the moment. And I travelled about. The one thing that I started to see was how many games that I would watch at, and I use this loosely, but I suppose it's how it's used as the kind of lower levels of the game in Scotland. But we're so, some of the football you witnessed was brilliant, was great. Some of the performances, the passion in some of the fans. But the one thing that I've always kind of felt throughout is the media coverage is just never there. And I suppose this is me now, which I don't always generally do in the podcast, but kind of giving and I'm more my opinion on it is that the media coverage, and it's one thing I've noticed is it's never, and I understand it. I'm not, saying I don't. I get it. I think we all kind of do, but with the media coverage not being as heavy, not being as big, a lot of people don't know, what's out there, what's going on, and certain clubs, which again I get, maybe don't have the resources or the money to put out, like, here's us, here's what we do, here's like a highlights package, which you see some teams doing, of course, but not every team's got that kind of luxury. And it's then, kind of trying to incentivize people going along and kind of trying to, and it's the one thing that I feel when I go to some of these grounds is that you just wish there was more of a coverage, or that there was more people there. And I know they've maybe been spoke about more than I had Sandy Clark on. I don't think I've spoke about Albion Rovers as much. But when you look at because we discussed it earlier, their playoff game, they sold out. But then fast forward to this season, or the games previous to that, the games after that, less than a quarter of those people were back in the stadium.
Yeah, yeah, and there's there's a lot of contributing factors. The way that we consume sport now is very different. In terms of the traditional methods and models, and we've got a cost of living crisis, and it's still an expensive day out and so on. But I couldn't agree more with you around more coverage of the game, celebrating the success. If anybody that's listening or watching this and wants to go to a game at the weekend, go and watch Airdrie. Brilliant to go and watch. Rhys McCabe has got them absolutely flying. A joy to go and watch. And you hear all these myths about people have never seen a good game of football on a plastic pitch. Well, Airdrie will bust that myth anytime you go and watch them. Just phenomenal. I was at their game last year when they got beat 5-4 in the end by was it 4-3? Sorry, with Dunfermline or 3-0 up at half time. But they're just they play the right way. They take chances, they take risks, but they're just, and there's loads of that. There's loads of teams like that are a joy to watch, and certainly just now, particularly with the Premiership and a winter break, get out and go and watch your local clubs. And I mentioned being at that Clyde game, there was a few familiar faces in the crowd who go and watch Motherwell week in, week out, that were at Hamilton watching Clyde and Bonnyrigg. So it's the fans are still there. We just need to entice them back out, and whether that's making it more cost effective, or it's expensive to take kids. I've always had an idea in my head that if you're affiliated to all young players who are affiliated to clubs, Scottish FA have got their quality mark, so they've got all their clubs who are affiliated to quality mark. You should almost have some sort of free pass to all SPFL games where there's availability. So you should be able to, if you play with a local club in the Hamilton area, you should be able to. And Hamilton are, it's probably a bad example because Hamilton are very, very good at inviting clubs in and getting players in to go and watch their teams. But we could all do more. But the point you make around media coverage is spot on, and that's why listening to Todd Lumsden and podcasts like this, it's great that a couple of old dinosaurs like myself and Todd, maybe not so much, but just to get more coverage of what's going on at the lower level and the lower leagues is very much needed.
And and because of the way that we're discussing this, and that I'll kind of share that in doing this, and this is why I'm always so appreciative of the people that come on and that take the time. Yourself, Todd, as I said, likes of Des, Gordon Smith, Dan Young, Steve Fernand, Jerry Strain, the list of people that have kind of took the time and came on has probably shocked me more. But the one thing that I would say that everybody has always kind of collectively agreed with, and I say that because I'm sure it's been brought up kind of a lot of times, but at least the majority that I've had the discussion with is surrounding the media coverage. And just one of the stories that I'll very quickly tell, this is where I understand it, but it maybe kind of took me aback, was obviously in doing this, and you've seen me being on here, I'll message in social medias and things, and that was where Todd and I it kind of spoke, and that's where the kind of majority of people it kind of came through. And there was a player, and I'll not kind of name the player, but from an SPL club who had agreed to come on, was happy to come on, had actually watched one of the episodes and kind of spoke about it. And on the day that he was due to come on, called me and felt the need to apologise, and then sent me a screenshot of the club finding out that he was coming on and the absolute pasting he took. So therefore couldn't come on. Now, the reason I'm kind of saying that, and as I say, I won't mention the player nor the club on it, but it kind of made me sit and go, he was coming on because he was passionate about football in Scotland and these kind of lower levels being kind of spoke about more. He had, experience in lower levels. He wanted to come on, he wanted to discuss. It was never really about what he was doing now. And we had that conversation. It was never really about that. It was about this. And where he had a free day and free time, and obviously, as I say, I appreciate media commitments from clubs and everything else, but without even having a discussion, the club quashed it. Then he had asked me if I wanted to have the discussion, because the media person within the club was happy to speak to me. And I then get a roasting for going to a player, not taking their proper channels and going through them. And I suppose that was just the part where I thought, there's got to be an element of, I appreciate every club, wants to do the best for their club. I suppose any club would tell you, any fan would tell you that they want to see their club one day winning the SPL title. That would be the dream that they would want to see. But in regards to fan bases, in regards to everything else, in regards to kind of coverage and pushing things out, the one thing I always feel is that clubs need to pull together and come together on that, because if they're all kind of pulling away in their own directions, there's never really anything structured in place. So it just kind of waffles away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it comes back to that, the point I made there around, the generation now that consume sport very differently. So, podcasts and TikToks and all the other YouTube shorts and everything else that the kids today are, that's where they get their information from. So we need more of that and I'm not suggesting that a club pulling a player from doing that isn't doing that type of thing, but I'm just of the view that we need to get more stories out there, tell more stories. And the point that we agreed on earlier on, somebody like Dick Campbell who's authentic, who's real. If you go down the route of club only, or if the club have really got a real stranglehold on what goes out, things tend to be sanitized. They tend to be quite monotonous, quite boring. You watch Sky Sports News and you hear every press conference from most managers down the Premier League, and they're all saying the same things because they've just they've been so well drilled by media teams that I saw earlier on today Vincent Kompany not sharing any information on injuries because his media advisor had told him not to. And they were making a bit of a joke about it, but there's a real there's an element of truth to that everything just becomes so sanitized because we're in a world where if you say the wrong thing, you get your knuckles wrapped pretty quickly.
And I agree with that. And I think the other part is as well, saying the wrong thing one, I agree, getting your knuckles up. Two, it's now sitting there forever. It's
Yes.
it's online. Somebody puts that, even if it's not an official press conference, on a phone, something, and it's now remaining there. Excuse me, for forever, which is why I always say, with this, I'll send it across. I've had players that are playing at clubs that have been on it. I'll send it across to them. I'll send it to the club. I'll wait until the whole, yep, we're completely fine with that. And then we go ahead and go from that. And I know I've kind of mentioned Darren Young, but again, he spoke to his players, and their captain, Paul McLean, was delighted to come on, and came on, and we chatted away. Gavin Riley is another who was happy to come on. And I suppose this is the reason I back from what I said earlier, the kind of media person at the club had got in touch with me just to confirm a couple of things, but were more than happy because he wanted to come on, for him to come on. There was never any issues surrounding that. They says, oh, look, he wants to come on, that's fine. There's just a couple of things we want to clear with you, which was totally understandable. It was totally fine. And he came on, and we done the episode. And that's when I say, when you look at the kind of SPL, I've even had managers from clubs there who have tried to come on and have been stopped by the chairman. And again, it's to talk about low-level football in Scotland. So I think for me, I always kind of look at it and go, the media coverage is one thing, but then I also think, and this is just my experience, I could be completely wrong, but people don't seem to be getting to voice what they perhaps want to voice.
Mm-hmm. And it can be so powerful if it's done properly. I was at the Dunfermline Athletic business club, and Mike Mulroney, president of the Scottish FA, was there as one of the guest speakers, and just spoke so passionately and so knowledgeable and so interesting around some of the challenges. He's taking questions from the floor, around the Hampden Park debacle. People love it, people hate it. VAR. Why we weren't hosting the final of the Euros, and we were only hosting group stage games, and so and he was honest. He answered everything genuinely, and it's just so refreshing when you get that peek behind the curtain and just better understand how the game's run and what's going on at all levels. So I'm totally in agreement with you. I think the more the better. Understanding that as you mentioned earlier, if something once it's on social media, it's there forever, and there have been pitfalls where players and all sorts have come foul. Not least that young supporter at Dunfermline after the Wraith Rovers game. You see that kind of image. I'm not suggesting that's anything to do with football players or clubs, but that kind of stuff. Once it's on camera, it's there forever.
Yeah. I suppose just kind of a couple of final wee bits to touch on, and just kind of very quickly. If you're sitting and you have the choice of what team to watch, what team. So if you can pick kind of any team to go and watch in the kind of Scottish game, what team would be your first going? Yep, do you know what? I'll go there.
Well, being a season ticket holder at Parkhead, that tends to be where I end up going. But that's not the only ground I go to. I take in most games at most levels. Whether it's I'm not quite like Scott Struthers at Hamilton Accies when he finds himself in some lower league pitch in Greater Manchester of a Monday evening to try and find the game. But I'll definitely find the game at any level and go and watch. And naturally, you've got an affiliation to the clubs that you played with, so they're the first clubs that you look at when the results are coming in. And if you've got a free weekend, that tends to be where you'll go. But other than that, just whatever game is local, whoever's Airdrie, I've mentioned them a couple of times. Quite happily go and watch Airdrie any time I can, because they're an interesting, exciting team to watch. Wraith Rovers another one. Go and watch Wraith. So try and get to as many games as I can. And if I'm not at Celtic Park, I'm in the lower leagues. That's where I think the real football is.
Yeah, and the last kind of a couple of very quick questions for you. And as I say, I really do appreciate your time. So, last TV series watched?
I'm not a big TV fan, to be honest. I can't think of a TV series that I've watched from start to finish. Not a big TV fan at all. I think I've watched Suits from start to finish, and that's about it.
Favourite type of food?
Italian.
Favourite team to watch out with Celtic?
Queen of the South.
Favourite player ever played with?
Brian Carrigan.
Favourite player ever to have played against?
Used to enjoy playing against Brian McPhee, and also played with him, but enjoyed playing against him.
Most influential manager?
Alan McLeish and Alan Maitland, both at different ends of my career, but both as influential. More so Alan Maitland if I have to pinpoint one.
Club you would have loved to have played for, but never get the chance?
Apart from my boyhood hero Celtic, probably Motherwell in the first team, because I never quite got to the first team.
If somebody could play you in a film, who would you choose to play yourself?
Oh, given the salt and pepper hairdo now, it'd probably be George Clooney. It would have to be.
Look, that was just a kind of couple of questions there. I massively do appreciate it. Look, Sandy, I really do massively appreciate your time this evening, and taking the time to come on.
No problem at all. It's been good fun. Good fun. If there's ever anything else, even we're always looking for opportunities to promote some of the work we're doing around the Scottish Football Partnership and Scottish Football Partnership Trust. So if there's any point you want to do something that's football related but not quite around playing the game, but it's still around lower league, grassroots, community football, just give us a shout. More than happy to do bits and pieces.
Sandy, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you, and all the best, and hopefully catch up with you throughout the season.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.